Haiti borders with the Dominican.
Her name is Serena Buffalino. They call her Mrs. B, and her class always begins with a pledge.
Something local, something global. Haiti.
They're words that carry
Yes.
weight here. Helping yourself means helping others, giving back, here and a world away in Haiti.
And nobody's helping them, except for people like us.
It was through her the class learned of Haiti, of the nearly 1 million orphans, many with no school, no support, no Mrs. B in their lives.
They could not wrap their head around that.
Mrs. B's students are among Toronto's most at risk. Their challenges vary from emotional and behavioral difficulties to learning disabilities. Their trauma is so severe they can't function in a regular school setting, and we aren't allowed to show most of their classmates.
For most of the kids, most of society has turned them away. And in this classroom, they're accepted. They're accepted no matter what for who they are.
Take Yolanda. She came here last year so burdened and withdrawn, she would often fall silent, sometimes for days on end. It was, she says, Mrs. B's patience, her quiet encouragement, that saved her.
She actually saves people's lives from dangers.
And perhaps that's why these marginalized kids feel such a kinship with the orphans of Haiti and why they were moved to act.
And so when Yolanda and Jackie and Patrick said, well, Miss B, we need to build them a school.
Build a school, no easy task. They started out raising money. They sold samosas, washed cars, screened movies, you name it. And in just a few months, this little class raised $20,000. So much, it's not just a one-room schoolhouse they can build, but a full 3-story school. And so Mrs. B set off on a journey she'd dreamed of, up into the dusty mountains above Port-au-Prince to a town called Canaan. It's home to thousands of earthquake refugees who live with no running water, no electricity, and no school, until now. The first step was a temporary school. It's up and running. 53 students already in uniform. The permanent school for 250 is growing from its foundations.
It makes me want to cry because she just makes me feel so awed, and I'm very proud of her.
All of this because of a handful of students back in Canada and Mrs. B, the teacher who believed in them.
These are for you.
At another fundraiser, a special tribute to the students, accepted by someone who, without Mrs. B, might not be here.
They believe in me and I believe in them, and together we not only change our lives, but we change the world around us.
For inspiring great things and seeing the potential in everyone, Serena Buffalino is this week's Everyday Hero.
Good morning. Bonjour. Comment ça va? Moi, ça va très bien. Hola. Ni hao. Ohio. Bienvenue. Yang Wang Ying. Bienvenidos. Yokoso. And welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And each and every week, I have the privilege and honor of taking you on a journey to places you've never been before, to stories you've never heard before. Each week, I get the magnificent opportunity to take you on a mental, physical, and spiritual adventure into the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry. And because I understand the power of stories, I am confident that somewhere along the line, either today or next week or 3 months from now, somewhere along the line, you're going to hear a story that's going to move you, a story that's going to make you see the world in a different way. Each week, my goal, my mission is to create a sound that resonates. And my hope is that you take that sound to use it as a bridge, as a template, as an inception point to get you to begin the journey of discovering the value of your own stories, of what your life means to not only to yourself and your family, but the people around you. I am in New York City, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am. Welcome to New York City, New York, New York. And this is a dream come true. This is a dream come true. To be here talking to you. This is my first show live on location. This is something that I have dreamt about for such a long time when we first started this show. And here I am. I am in Ground Zero, New York City, the center of the universe. I am in Times Square. And when I say each week that you have to discover the value of your story, what I'm saying is you have to take time to begin to appreciate where you are in your life. And I'm gonna give you a classic example of what I'm talking about. I came to New York this week for two reasons. One, I actually have been a student for the past 3 or 4 months in Christie's Education, Christie's auction house, the second largest auction house in the world. And they have these wonderful education programs. And I got really selected to be a part of their watch program, their watch education. So I spent the last 3 or 4 months literally studying high-end watches, your Rolexes, your Patek Philippe's, your Breitlings, Richard Mille, we're talking about 60, 70, $100,000 watches. And when you see how they're made, how they're produced, you will understand why they cost that kind of money. And what Rolex, I never knew what Rolex really was to just not only the watch industry, but the whole world. And we'll do a whole show on that. And I also came here to the Gemological Institute of America to study kind of an advanced course on gem identification. In fact, this is just the manual. I have to learn, oh, you can't really see it. I have to learn, oh, here you go. I have to learn all this by the end of the week. And there's a test. And this is day 3 And what amazed me about the program, we're talking about these beautiful gemstones. I mean, everything, the whole gemological field. We're talking about how to identify what each gemstone is. And the guy who's teaching, the professor, he is a PhD, very knowledgeable. But the whole time that he was talking and the class is going on, what was missing was the passion. We were talking about gemstones and rubies and sapphires almost as if they grow on trees. And the whole time, and again, don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful course. And as a scientist, you know, I always say art, science, history, magic, and this is the science of it. But what I got out of it was he was talking about it with no passion whatsoever. And the whole time I'm sitting there listening to him and I'm saying, nobody cares. Nobody cares. I can't, we were talking about sapphires, and when you treat a sapphire, sometimes you can heat treat it, or you can, as I told you in the past, sapphires, the difference between sapphires and rubies is that rubies have corundum in it. They have a trace amount of corundum, which gives it a red color. Sapphire, which is the gemstone of this month, September, sapphire has a percentage of iron and titanium. And what companies will do is, gemstone producers, they will take rough corundum, a rough sapphire, and if it doesn't look right, it doesn't have the right color, they'll just dip it in a whole vat of titanium, and they heat it so it changes the molecular structure, and then they include the titanium in it, which changes the color of it, and the color only goes so deep. Now, did that sound anywhere near passionate to you? Those of you who like sapphire, a good friend of mine, Ava Tony, was telling me how much she loves sapphire. So Ava, when you heard that, was there something, or my friend Doretta, when you heard that, was there anything inside of you that said, yeah, I want a sapphire. I can't wait to know how 10% of it, the first top 10% of it is actually blue because it's treated. And oh, I don't know, I can live much longer without knowing how much titanium is in that sapphire ring that I've wanted so badly. No, nobody has ever said that. And he went on and on, and again, very knowledgeable. The science, the words were just rolling off his lips, and this, and of course, you know, the so and so and so. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what about the good stuff? What about what it actually does? How it makes you feel? Throughout the whole history of mankind, sapphires have been the gemstone of royalty. Men and women, kings and queens, use sapphires as a way to represent their power. And he's just saying it like it's just a loaf of bread. And what I got out of that was, you got to know the value of your own story, because nobody's going to give you that value. If you can't tell your own story, nobody's going to tell you the story for you. And if they do, they'll never treat your story like you would. So in the last 2 or 3 days that I've been here talking about gemstones, whether it be the watch industry or gemstones, GIA, I mean, this is the headquarters. I am on 47th Street in New York, and literally behind me, it's just a little bit further up the road, okay, about 2 blocks from where I took this picture. And it made me understand that if you don't know your story, then nobody else is going to know your story, and therefore they won't know your value. Because nowhere in that conversation about gold, platinum, all the gemstones. We were learning about all the gemstones. And at no point in time that the people that worked along in that industry for thousands of years were they ever discussed. I have a my good friend Doretta, and I actually, Barbara understands this too. There used to be an old commercial, a Midas muffler commercial, that you would say the guy would walk into the store, into the auto shop, and he says, "Hey, I'm here for the $29.99 muffler deal. There's my car." And the guy would reach underneath the table, he'd pull out a muffler and say, "Here's your muffler." And the guy would be like, but I wanted it installed. Oh, you wanted it installed. That's a lot like what I felt today. People don't take the time to value where they are in your life. You have got to just take that time to look at to remember where you were and where you are now. This is a spectacular week for me. This is a spectacular day because I got a chance today just to walk around my neighborhood, and I began to realize that I have not been here in literally 40 years. I have not been here in 40 years. Last time I came to New York and drove down this street was with my friend Maxie from Jamaica High School and Richard. They drove me back to my hotel. I was in Queens. And so that was my 40th reunion. And now 3 years later, I'm here again. And I was just the memories were just all flooding back. What it felt to be here again in this place. Times Square. I'm from New York, but I've never stayed in a hotel, in a place on Times Square. The Empire State Building is down the street from me. The Madison Square Garden is the next block from where I'm staying right now. And it began to dawn on me that 43 years ago, this is where I saw Star Wars. Yeah. 1515 West Broadway is right here. And I stood there, although the theater is no longer there. It was called the Astor Plaza. And 43 years ago, I stood online for 3 hours waiting to see Star Wars for the very first time. And what was even more amazing as I began to think about that story was a movie that I don't really talk about that much, but that movie had totally changed my life in as far as what I wanted to do was Indiana Jones. Yeah. Indiana Jones and the Temple Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark. I saw it, the very first Indiana Jones, right here in the same movie theater on Astor Place, 1515 West Broadway. And I remember seeing Indiana Jones, and it just blew my mind. He was a guy he was a scientist. He was an adventurer. He traveled all over the place. He wasn't like James Bond. He had all these girls and everything. You know, he might have one girlfriend or whatever, but it was all about his mind, and he was just so cool. And I remember having one of those fedora hats like Indiana Jones did. And I used to shop at Banana Republic. And Banana Republic, for those of you who don't know, now it's all upscale and yuppie and buppy, whatever. But what do they call them? Metrosexual. Yeah, that's the term. But when Banana Republic first started, it was a store dedicated to people who wanted to be like Indiana Jones. That whole rugged. I remember they had a real working World War II Jeep in the middle of the showroom floor. And that's what I wanted to be. And I began, as I sat there in this class, learning about watches and learning about gemstones and sitting in the center of the gemology universe, especially in New York. Diamond brokers all up and down the street, and gold and jewelry and platinum and everything. And this is what I do for a living. I have become the things that I dreamt about for so long. Once upon a time has come true. At long last, I am here. I have arrived. And it got me to start thinking, that's what's missing. That's the thing that's missing. We don't take the time in our lives to think about the way we used to feel, the things that we used to want once upon a time. Once upon a time. We dreamt. There's something that you're doing right now that once upon a time it was a dream. And I think because we're in this fast paced everything, we forget that. We forget that once upon a time, all we wanted was a big wheel. Remember the big wheels? All I wanted was a big wheel. Oh my God, Mom, please get me a big wheel. If I can have that, my life would be complete. Remember you was in college and all you wanted was you just wanted a car, like just simple, 4 wheels, a steer wheel, an engine. A lawnmower engine would be fine, as long as you could just be in a car. You didn't care. Now you're looking for the 2021 Lexus or Range Rover. In the car that you got that's only like maybe a 2019, oh, that's just old. Today's lesson just got me to thinking how we don't value pretty much anything nowadays, because there's always the next thing. He talked about synthetic diamonds, and he said, that professor of ours, well, there's the new thing is synthetic diamonds, which you all have to be aware of how to identify them. But some people are worried about synthetic diamonds. And when you really understand it, it's not going to cause a problem, because synthetic diamonds, just like when they had synthetic rubies and synthetic emeralds, when they came out, we sold more emeralds and more rubies because more natural rubies and emeralds because of the synthetics. And the whole time I kept thinking, what about the people? What about the people whose dreams and hopes are built on that gemstone that you just so cavalierly say, oh, well, there's just more and we'll sell more. Being back in New York, I had completely forgotten the power of the city. I've completely forgotten how just the energy that you feel from the moment that you get here. First of all, there's 8.8 million people really in New York State. But in New York City, believe it or not, there's only 1.6 million people. But yet, that can't be correct. I have to check those numbers again. I really have to check those numbers again. But when you really think about it, it feels like when you walk through the streets of New York and you see my Facebook post, it feels like the whole world is here. And the thing about New York is everybody's searching for a spot. Everybody wants to be a star here. That's the energy of New York. Everything is being sold. I've seen more street vendors than I've seen in 20 years. I mean, Chicago has street vendors, but not like this. I mean, I've seen guys, I have to be in class early in the morning, 6 o'clock, sometimes 7 o'clock, and already people are out there with their carts. And I'm talking about the big, not just the little hot dog carts or the Mexican churrero carts. No, I'm talking about big carts where people literally should be dragged by a car. And these people are pushing it. I've literally seen guys pushing and pulling their carts to be there the whole rest of the day. I've seen more homeless people than I've seen in a long, long time. And of course, most of you know I was homeless. But the homelessness here just seemed even more hopeless. And it just got me to thinking about value? What does it mean to live a life without really understanding your value? Yeah, sure, I could have come back to New York and seen the sights and the sounds and my sister and everything, and take the classes and, get my certifications and all this other stuff. But it's far more richer, I think, when you can just get to the point where you sit back and you just think that once upon a time, this was all a dream. You have to begin to, when you value your own story, when you understand the power of stories, you begin to understand that you're in control. You are the director. You are the screenplay writer. You are the costume director. You are the actor, of course. And of course, there's all kinds of outside forces coming in and characters that you didn't want in your play, ex-husbands, ex-wives, boyfriends, things are going on, the police, whatever. But ultimately, you control it. And what's even better is when you begin to understand the power of that. I clearly remember running down the street after watching Indiana Jones, imagining what it would feel like to travel the world. And I do. I remember clearly being this little skinny kid and thinking about what would it be to look for treasures and understand that globe or that piece of jewelry belonged to whoever. And that's what I do. And my point is, it happened because it was a story that I kept telling myself. It was a story that I kept imagining, not only just on a conscious level, but I imagined it on a subconscious level, on a spiritual level. And that's why it came true. And of course, God is all in that. God is all in that. But the key thing is to understand that the prayers and the words that you're saying to God, that's how they become answered, because you believe in it. You believe in the story. The most important person that you have to tell a story to is to yourself. I'm 60 years old, and I cannot begin to tell you how good it feels to just be here, to just be alive. Now, I'm not rich, I'm not famous. Rihanna still hasn't called me. I don't understand why. My head is getting any smaller. I had to find a place in my room. I didn't think the lighting was good enough, and I called my executive producer and I said, "Is the lighting right?" And I was downstairs in the lobby and there was noise, and she was just like, there's only two reasons why you're not in your room. Either you got a hottie up there or you didn't pay the bill. And I'm like, oh my God, really? And I laughed. And I laughed because I'm just so grateful to be here. Most of you know I teach science, in 675,000 people died in 1918 in the United States. And now we're over that number from the pandemic, and yet I am here. And when we come back from our commercial break, we still have to pay the bills no matter where I am, I will begin to teach you and show you how you can use your stories to empower you to do anything you want. See you on the other side. All right, we're back. We are back, and I'm still in New York City. Something I wanted to say for a long, long time, live from New York. It is the Gem Hunter Stories. Just needed to get that out. Stories. In fact, I asked the professor today, because we had a couple of classes with him, and he just put his name up on the board. And I know his name was Cristiano Brazili or something along. I can't pronounce. I don't want to mispronounce his last name, but his first name was Cristiano. And I heard his accent, and because I spent so much time in Europe, I knew he was Italian. And I raised my hand and I said, "Excuse me, professor." I said, "Why are you here? What brought you to this point?" So you're teaching the class and you're very knowledgeable. What has gotten you to this point? And he was shocked. He literally stopped and looked at me like, oh, as if no one ever asked him that question before. And it struck me as strange, because here's a man, and he has a PhD in all types of material science, and he came to the United States, and he took GIA and became a graduate gemologist, and one thing led to another, and he became a field gemologist. And after it was over, after the class was over, he pulled me aside and said, "Thank you." I said, "For what?" And he's just like, "Thank you for giving me a chance. To thank you for having interest in my story." That's what he said. And I told him, I said, "We're in the jewelry business, right?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "How do you know something has value?" And he says, "Well, once you determine," he says, "Well, that's what this class is about. You have to figure out what it is." And I say, "And that's what I do. I had to figure out who you are. I had to allow you to tell me who you are in order for me to really see where your passion was. Why can you talk about these gemstones and just let it flow out your mouth like water? What was your journey? How did you get here? Did you always speak English? How long did you live in the United States? All these things." And he said, "I never thought about it like that." And I said, "Yeah, nothing has value without a story." And every day in my life, ever since I've started really beginning to understand that concept, it becomes more and more clear to me. Nothing has value without a story. If you're not telling your story, and I'm not talking about, "Oh, I suffered this," or, "Oh, I went through this." Stories. Why are you excited about being where you're at? Remembering when getting through that school or that program meant the world to you. Because if you don't tell your story, who's going to tell it? Who's going to understand who you are? As I'm taking these classes, and I began to realize that the value is based on what we think it is. That's why it's talked about in such non-committal, unpassionate ways, because the only thing they're thinking about is, okay, this is gold, this is a gemstone, this is an emerald, okay. It's made out of this, and if you add a little bit more of this, it'll make it better. But they don't talk about what it means. This whole book, this whole huge book that I have to study, this whole, and you can barely see, this whole huge book, there's nothing in here that talks about passion. The category of transparent blue and violet gems include popular stones like sapphires at the top and the bottom, and tanzanite at the right. Fluorite on the left is more rarely seen as a gemstone. And then it says separating blue and violet gems. Some of the most popular colored gemstones in the world fall in the blue and violet category. In this section of this lab manual, you'll find blue and violet gems sorted by transparency and RI, which is refractive index. That's not why people buy jewelry. That's not why people put their hard-earned money and effort into buying a piece of jewelry. My co-expert, Laura, when Laura received that engagement ring from her husband on her 5th anniversary, he didn't give it to her because he knew the percentage of iron and titanium. He got it because it represented, he got it because he wanted to tell a story of his love for Laura. And I don't know Laura that well. I don't know Laura no more than just what you guys know, probably even more because, you know, you're watching all her shows and she's talking about, but I don't know who Laura is. I just found out that she lived in Canada. But what I do know is that she has somebody that loves her. What I do know is that when she showed her hand on Facebook about the ring, that her husband bought her a diamond and emerald, a sapphire ring, and she loved it. That's her story. When you think about how much death has been around lately, the actor from, oh my goodness, I forgot what show it was on. One of the, I forgot the show that it was on, just left my memory. Comedian, you know, he died. Well, 2 of them actually, black comedian and a white guy. Okay, yeah, one of the guys, AJ Johnson, you know, from Fridays and things like this, he died. You know, oh, the actor from the comedian from Sex and the City. The guy with glasses. So I don't know all the characters, but I remember seeing him 57 years old, gone. Apparently he had been sick for a while. 57. So how does that make me feel? And I'm 60. Next month I'll be 61 years old. I don't feel it. Well, maybe a little. But if you don't take the time to appreciate your own stories, where you are in your life. Yes, bills are still coming, you know, problems. I still live in Chicago, the crime, everything else. But I have to think to myself where I am right now. I think one of the most beautiful things about gemstones is that gemstones represent your story. That's why we buy them. That's a part of the reason why they intoxicate us, because they serve as markers. That diamond, that ruby, that emerald, that was on your hand, those stones were here before you, and they'll still be here after you're gone. I think somewhere along the line, I told you, I believe that God created gemstones before she created humans, especially women. And I think there was a trade-off. I think the trade-off for being lasting for tens of thousands and millions of years was that gemstones don't get a choice to be what they want to be. They are whatever they are. A ruby is a ruby, a sunstone is a sunstone, an amethyst is an amethyst. And you can change it up a little bit, but that's what it is. Gem identification is trying to figure out what it is. And the trade-off that I believe that we made as human beings was that we don't last forever. We don't last forever. Those of you who are my age, those of you who are older, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every day, somebody else is gone. Every day, whether it be from COVID, whether it be from crime, whether it be from whatever. And the question is, what's this story? What's their story? What were they? Who did they want to be when they were children once upon a time? And who are they today? And if you haven't gotten to where you want to be in your life, then because you understand the power of stories, you understand that you are in control of the characters that are in your story. Just like if you add a little iron or add a little bit titanium to sapphires, you can make it more blue. We can do the same thing. We can add elements. We can add people that is going to help us along the journey. We can go back to school. We can do the things that we need to do to increase who we are, increase our value. And I think the way to get to that is to just take the time to sit back. Just take the time to evaluate where you are. And not in a critical way, in a checklist way, because you wouldn't do that if you was watching yourself on a movie screen. A movie, you would know that you're the character, you're the hero of the story. And how many movies have we all seen where some days it looked like the hero's not gonna make it? You know, those old stories where the superhero movies, especially. How many times have we seen a superhero movie that we said, I thought Superman was the hero because I don't think he's gonna make it. And yet he finds a way to do it. He finds a way to become. And I think because we live in this world where so few people value things, we have to find that value in ourselves. We have to see the beauty, and not in just each other, but in ourselves. One of the things I got being here in New York is, oh my God, some of the most beautiful people on the planet are here. I've seen more beautiful people, men and women, just walking down the street. I saw this guy. He was so muscular. I mean, as you guys know, I'm a scientist. I've studied anatomy, so I pretty much know all the muscles in the human body. All of them were right there. And I just walked up to him. I said, "Excuse me, brother." I said, "What is it like to walk down the streets of New York, just looking at buildings, thinking, which one do I want to lift for my chest workout today? No, not that one. That was shoulders yesterday. How about that one?" And he just laughed and he says, "Man, thank you so much, man." He says, "You know, I work so hard and sometimes I wonder." And I said, "Wonder about what?" And he says, "I wonder if it's worth it." And I'm looking at him looking like just the perfect human specimen. And I was just like, do you own any mirrors in your house at all? I mean, what? And I told him, I said, "I'm not gay, anything else, just wow." And he said, "Thank you." Because obviously, in his own story, you know, even the way he looked, he still found it hard to see his story in the way his story affects the world. I saw a young lady, I was in Madison Square Garden, just walking past, which again is like a block from my hotel. And I was taking pictures, and there was a homeless guy on the partition is blocking the street. He was there, maybe, I don't know, you know, homelessness is hard to tell the age, but he was up there. He was certainly in my age group. And this young white guy, and you know, long beard and everything else. And this woman came up, and she was just a New Yorker. She just came to him and said, are you okay? Did you need water or food or anything else? And he just looked at her. He just said, yeah, I'll take anything you have. And she pulled out a bag and, like a Subway sandwich and a drink and everything else. And I wanted to take a picture of that because it was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful to see that moment, to see in this city where there's so much, everybody's moving at level 10. And yet she took the time to recognize the value of his story, the value of who he was as a person. New York gemstones are a representation of that. Your homework assignment this week, because the teacher side of me is coming out, your homework assignment this week is to look at the pieces of jewelry that you have in your possession and do an appraisal. Literally sit back and do an appraisal and go back and look at that ring, look at those earrings, look at that necklace that someone gave you, and take a moment to think about it. Think about where you were when you got that. Where you were when you received that. Even that engagement ring, even though you and your man are no longer together, you and your wife are no longer together. Think about the day when you gave that engagement ring, that symbol, to that woman that at that time you thought she was the most beautiful woman on the planet. You wanted to spend the rest of your life with her. That's what sapphires are. Sapphires Sapphires are an intoxicating gemstone. Sapphires are known to work on the mind and clear energy and allow you to see other people's thoughts. So imagine, I want you to think back about when you gave that ring, whether it be a sapphire or diamond or turquoise or tourmaline. When you received that ring, where were you? What were you doing? Was it something expected? Was it something that you worked hard for? How did you feel? Because if you start working like that, then you can start extrapolating that out to other things. Once upon a time when you thought you wanted to go to school and you finished that program. Look at your children and remember when they were little and when you thought they were just the cutest things on earth. Yeah, now you want to kill them, but back in the day, they were beautiful and they still are. It is so wonderful, I think. I know when you can just think back of your own story. And it's not about bragging. It's just not. It's not about, well, I'm here and then. No, it's more of, as my Christian friends say, you just get to the point where you just say thank you. Because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Thank you for your time here. To be where I'm at today and to be able to go back and remember when I walk down these streets, and here I am. Here I am. Still living, still breathing, still relatively healthy. I walked something like 15, 16,000 steps today. I'm just so happy that I was able to walk. I'm happy to have my fingers and toes on all my teeth and things. I'm just happy that I survived and lived long enough to appreciate the place where it all started. I think if we start thinking and valuing each other. And that's why it's so important to me, because I remember it's hard for me to walk down the street sometimes in this city since I've been here because of just seeing so many homeless people. So many homeless people. I mean, of Spanish and white and black and Asian and just, yeah, I mean, New York, you don't see a lot of Asian people homeless, but they're here. They're here. And you just want to ask them, how did you get here? How did you get here? The people walking down the street looking like supermodels, comparing themselves with all the other supermodels who's walking down the street. Everybody here is looking for that to be on top, to have their stories be told. And I think if people start telling the stories to themselves, of seeing how far they've grown, you know, you're not going to get a medal. The Wall Street Journal is not going to print an article. The New York Times is not going to print an article about you. And if you're fortunate enough, when this is all over, you'll sit there and tell your kids, yeah, I lived through a pandemic. I mean, think about it. We all get a chance, those of us who make it, Lord willing. We're going to tell our kids. Our kids are going to study. Their kids are going to study the pandemic of what, 20, when did this start? 2020? Yeah. And you survived, just like the people who talked about the Spanish flu. Don't let your life be an afterthought. Don't let your life be spoken about like the way my professor talked about gemstones. And again, I'm not criticizing him as a great program, but where's the passion? Where's the energy? He's from Italy. I mean, Italian people are very passionate. Jewelry throughout history, gemstones would pass through Italy. That was a major Genoa and all these Venice, Vienna was the center of the trade. And when you hear someone from that tradition, someone from that world and that energy, and he's like, you can hear he's Italian. And yet he just spoke about it like, yeah. It'd be like going back to France, and my French friends just talking about food or wine, like, yeah, have something to eat. But yet we do that to ourselves. We do that to ourselves every single day. And I'm just saying to tell you that it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter what, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just make it, and just, it's not about that. It's about really understanding your story. Where do you fit into your story? Where does that gemstone that has to be treated to look good, where does that gemstone fit into the overall story? No, it's not the Hope Diamond. You know, no, it's not a sapphire or an emerald or jade that you would find in a museum or costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But on someone's hand, that piece of jewelry means the world. In someone's life, who you are as a person means the world to them. You mean the world to them. Discover the value of your own story. Next week, I want to talk a little bit more about the romance of sapphires. Romance in general, but the romance in sapphires. because sapphire is really, when you think about it, when you think about what a sapphire means, the intoxication of a sapphire, I want you to begin to think about what the sapphires or what gemstones mean to you and how you embody that. Just the beauty of that. When you get dressed or when you do the things that you do in your life. So, welcome to New York. I hope you enjoyed the Facebook post that I put on that, because I wanted to show you the energy. I wanted to show you, especially those of you who have never been to New York, this is what New York is. Please come, please experience it. But now I think you begin to understand why New Yorkers take so much pride in living here. Because this is, for us, this is the center of the universe. And it feels like that every second that you're here. So, my name is Barry Mixon. I am a gemological storyteller. And I hope that this week will be the week that you sit back, you look at your life, and you begin to discover the value of your own stories. Until next week, au revoir.
I'm hanging on your every word, the love inside, I feel it burn. I've never felt this way before. I've had a taste.